Cope Queens, Episode 2. This is the second episode in our 8-part series, Black and Depressed. In this episode, we discuss the value of going to therapy, finding the right therapist, and share our personal therapy experiences. You're listening to the Cope Queens podcast, where every Wednesday, co-hosts Elaina and Tracy Hampton challenges mental health stigmas through sharing personal experiences, storytelling, interviews, and roundtable discussions about everyday life challenges. This podcast in no way is a replacement for mental health treatment. To learn more, please visit copequeens.com. Now, without further ado, let's cope together. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Today we are going to talk about the therapy relationship. I'm going to just talk about the ins and outs and our experiences and preferences when it comes to finding a therapist. And so we're going to just dive right in and get started. So Tracy, you and I, again, we've been friends for a long time, so I know a lot of your business anyway.
hmm I'll let you share a little here. Don't get too get too involved, sharing too much.
But it's not something that, we don't have, you don't have any, there's nothing to be ashamed about. And I think
Yeah,
that sharing our personal journeys and experiences with these things, to me, it's a sign of courage.
yeah,
Um, because I don't view it as a sign of weakness today. Now, that may have been something I would have felt in my 20s, but where I am now in life, I'm not ashamed. I'm not going to be ashamed of me getting the support that I need, and because life throws us curveballs all the time.
hmm
And I really feel like, and this is something that you can relate to, I really feel like when you're making moves and making
yeah,
things happen for yourself and things are starting to finally connect, that seems like when life comes at you the
yes.
hardest,
Oh yes,
you know.
yes. You
And
know that's the week I've been having.
I
So
I know that's why I was like, I know you can relate to this.
yes,
But I just think that, when we experience those moments, who do we turn to when you just
hmm
need that additional support and you need those tools to say, I need to get through this. I know I need to get through this, but I don't know how to get through this. And
hmm
yeah, like my mom is my best friend. And I know
hmm
I can talk to her about anything, just like she talks to
hmm
me about anything. And we give each other advice, right? But there's
hmm
also a certain bias because my mom is my mom and my mom loves me. And
hmm
sometimes I don't know if her advice is coming from a place of motherly love or connection as a woman or if it's constructive. And so that's why I'm like, sometimes like, she my mama. She gonna tell me just what I want to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
And so for me, having that therapeutic relationship is beneficial because it is non-biased, it is non-judgmental. I can be authentic. Their input and their advice and their direction is only to see me overcome whatever I'm facing. And I
Yeah.
definitely think that when I seek out therapy, it's been more situational. Like it's not something that I do regularly. Like I don't go once a week, for 10 years.
hmm
Whatever's happening in the moment that I feel like I need that additional support, that's when I, make that contact and seek out
Yeah.
that additional support.
Yeah. And mine is the exact same, Elena. It's more situational, where it helps. I'm one of those people where sometimes I need to talk it out and process it to get out of my head. Um, I do journaling and, other things, but it helps to have that conversation. And for me, it helps to have that therapist that I can talk with, that biased person that I can just, share whatever with. And you were mentioning family and friends, and I think that's what people normally or who they normally decide to go to. And it's nothing wrong with, you have those trusted people that, you want to share things with. But it is something that you want to take with a grain of salt, because it does come with that bias,
Yeah.
unintentional bias, because they care for you and they want the best for you. And then sometimes people are, they have the mindset where I've been where you are, this is what you need to do.
Right.
And a lot of times things don't follow that order, and it's different for everyone. So I really think it's helpful just to have that therapeutic relationship, with someone, where you're able to share and just be yourself, and get a professional, viewpoint.
Yeah, and and I think a lot of times, when I think about, so there are definitely family members outside of my mom that I feel like there's certain things that I'm completely comfortable in sharing, but because there is this fear of judgment, because as human beings, we can be somewhat judgy. All of us can be a little bit judgy, and I think that that keeps me from sharing too much because
Yeah.
I have an aunt and I love her dearly. And she is a very special person because she's a very caring person.
Yeah.
But she's also very opinionated, and she's also very judgmental. Even though
Mhm.
she does not identify, she will tell you in a heartbeat that she is not judgmental, but she absolutely is. And so when we have family get-togethers and she's part of the conversation, I'm always wondering, like, is she judging me in this moment? I'm
Yeah.
like, she is not gonna look at me the same, But I definitely, I have a unique relationship with a lot of my aunts to where they will say some off the wall stuff, and I'm just like, oh my
Mhm.
goodness, because now I'm in the moment where I'm just judging them. But I
Yeah.
definitely think that when you know, I've experienced, therapy and working with therapists and counselors, that the thing that I appreciate the most is feeling safe, that I'm not being
Mhm.
judged and I can say, absolutely whatever I want to, and nobody else is going to know about it now. The
Yeah.
caveat to that, for all those who have not experienced therapy or who are considering therapy, please know that as a licensed professional, they are bound by confidentiality, but there are limits to that. And what I mean
Yeah.
by that is if you are indicating or they are concerned about your safety or the safety of someone else, they do
Mhm.
have to breach that confidentiality. But other than that, it can feel so good to just go in. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at myself because I remember, one of my first therapy experiences where like the first 5 minutes I probably dropped every swear word imaginable because of the amount of stress that I was feeling. And the
Mhm.
therapist just looked at me and she was like, "Feel better?" I was like, "I
Mhm.
do." And she was like, "Great."
Mhm.
And, and there's definitely different types of therapists, and it's not a one size fit all. Like the therapist that works best for you may not be the therapist that works best for me.
Mhm.
And they
Yeah.
and like many professions, some of them specialize in certain areas. So for example, there are the cognitive behavioral therapists versus an art therapist, and so they have different modalities that they specialize in. And it's important that people identify first what it is that they need in a therapist.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
you what type of person, what type of knowledge do you need in order to feel supported or that you want to get that support from? And sometimes people are like, well, I want a black therapist.
Mhm.
And that's okay. Go get you a black therapist.
Mhm.
Because if that's what's going to help you connect and be able to be yourself and feel comfortable, do you.
Mhm.
Like, there's no requirements to say you have to have a therapist that does this, or that. You find the one that works best for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, Elena. It's finding what fits for you, and that's not going to be the same for everyone. And you were mentioning therapists having, different techniques and modalities and things like that. But therapists, they have different strengths too. Like you can go
Yeah.
to a therapist where their strength is marriage and family counseling. So they're really great at people who are having those family issues or whatever, and you want to, and that's what your focus is. There's some therapists that are great with like crisis counseling.
Yes.
There are some therapists. So it's all I always liken, and I tell people this all the time. I liken finding a therapist to trying to find a spouse or a mate. It's pretty much finding that right person for what you're looking for. And I personally don't have more than one, but I do know people who have more than one therapist. They'll go to one therapist for this, maybe for they're in marriage and family counseling, so they go to that therapist for that, but then they have their own personal counselor when they're dealing with their mental health issues. So it's all about finding out what works for you and really digging deep and being self reflective and finding out what characteristics are important to you. Because there may be some, you were mentioning race, age. Some people may not care about any of that.
Yeah.
I know me personally, I don't care about race. I could see a black therapist or a white therapist. It doesn't matter. I'm like an intuitive person. So it's like what feels right for me. I know within a couple of minutes whether or not me and another person will kind of gel. And if I feel like it's awkward and we're not, or I feel like they're awkward to me, because some non-black therapists may not feel comfortable with a black client. There's all kind of ethical issues there. So I don't think anyone would ever admit it. But to me, I can kind of feel, a person being uncomfortable with me, and that would immediately turn me off. I personally prefer to have a therapist that's older than me, who's experienced life, Um, and I know some people prefer to have one, closer to their age range. So it's all about what works for you, and really being self-reflective and first finding out, you know, what is it that's important.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, and I know that's something that, you and I have different preferences. So like you, I race is not an issue for me. I do prefer, and I've had the most success with female therapists who are close to my age. Not exactly my age, but within, a certain range, because I feel like there's this relatability. Because
Mhm.
that's usually what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that can identify and relate to what I'm going through in that moment.
Mm.
And usually my issues are more specific to, me as a woman,
Mhm.
versus me as a black woman. It's usually just
Mhm.
me as a woman. Here are the challenges that I am experiencing. And so I've seen male therapists in the past, and I don't think that they get it per se, or at least that was how I perceived it. And so, like you said, there was this awkwardness. Whereas I've also seen older therapists,
Mhm.
and it just, the connection just wasn't there. I
Mhm.
felt a sense of judgment, and that's probably my own paranoia and my own anxiety. But
Mhm.
like you, in the sense that I can immediately tell if I'm going to be able to be connected to someone. And what's interesting is
Mhm.
in my professional career, I typically, make a really quick connection with, those who are older than me. But when it comes to a therapist, I do prefer to have someone that is closer to my age and someone
Mhm.
that is a woman.
Yeah. I think I look at it like I don't want to have a therapist that I can run into at the club or something hanging out like, oh, hey, girl.
Girl, when the last time you been in a club?
Oh, no. Oh, no. But I still have that thought in my head. Like, if we're the same age and I can run into you somewhere, I'm not trying to have you as my therapist. I'm sorry.
Like, girl, let's go take some shots.
Right.
And see, for me, it's like I don't want to feel like I'm sitting down with my grandma and she relating to
Right.
something to me that she did back in the 30s. Like, it's
I
not gonna
know.
work.
But it just goes to show that, you have to really, I think, just be self-reflective and just dig deep and just really think about what's important to you. And even if it sounds crazy, like, okay, I don't want to, talk to my grandma, or I don't want, a BFF, whatever that thing is, if it's important to you, then make sure that you take those things into account when you're looking for a therapist.
Yeah, and I say, you be picky, because this is
Mhm.
a service you're for most of us, right? This
Mhm.
is a service that we're paying for.
Mhm.
whether your insurance plays a part or deductibles and all that, this is a service that you're paying for. So why not find the right fit for you? And it can be
Yeah.
challenging,
Mhm.
especially if you want a specific a therapist that, is representative of a specific culture or community. It can be very challenging to find that, but the resources are there. And
Yeah.
sometimes it just takes time. And I think a lot of times we just, want to dive right in, or we may be having that state of emergency. But I think we have to figure out, like, if you're truly suffering a crisis, there are definitely resources out there for you to get assistance in that moment, and we just have to be open to it. And then
Yeah.
if we're looking for that longer term relationship, you may have to go through multiple therapists to find the right fit.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like finding a spouse. So this is a
Mhm.
relationship, that you're building with someone, and it has to be built on one of trust. And you have to
Mhm.
be comfortable, because if you're not comfortable, you're not going to be authentic. And if you're
Mhm.
not going to be open minded and authentic and present and active, then
Yeah.
it's a waste of your time. And, and the therapist is going to feel horrible because they're going to feel like they failed you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you brought up a really good point about, being picky. And if the first one doesn't work out, try again. Unlike a marriage where you make that decision, you're stuck. You're not stuck when it comes to finding a therapist. So, you have a session, maybe, within that very first session, maybe there's a couple. If it doesn't work, don't be afraid. And don't be afraid too that you're hurting the therapist's feelings, because they know,
Yeah.
it's like finding that fit. So they understand they if you feel like there isn't a connection, then go find it with someone else where you feel like there is that connection, and you're more likely to get the help that you're looking for.
Yeah, and most of the time you can say to it, like, I remember I had an experience, and she was an older woman, and I just said to her, I said, I don't feel like this is working for me. I don't feel like
Hmm.
our dynamic is working for me. And I asked her, I said, do you have a referral? Someone else that that you think that maybe I could build a stronger connection with. And she was open to that. And she
Yeah.
found the therapist that I, occasionally see now. And it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to invest that time and energy to find the right fit for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. You do. And the good thing about it is that once you do find that perfect fit, then the work begins, the healing
Yes.
begins. You learn those healthy coping mechanisms and
Yes.
strategies. So,
Yep.
absolutely.
So speaking of that, I'm just interested. What's one coping skill that you've gained over the years that you still rely on today?
A healthy one?
Yes. we not
So you
we,
have to be really
we
clear
not
with
talking
me.
about your cocktails in this episode.
Right? I'm not going there today, I promise. But I'd have to say the two things, I'll say two because I'm still working on the other: meditation and journaling.
Okay.
Meditation is one that I really enjoy. It helps me set my intention for the day. And I've picked that up through going to a therapist, and us talking about those things that I feel like would be helpful. Journaling is also helpful. I don't do it as often, but I do think if I put the time and energy into the journaling, then I would really see the benefits from it. But those two seem to be my favorites so far.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, I definitely, the journaling. So and I've shared with you in the past that I've picked up bullet journaling, and I think I like the
Yeah.
creativity with designing it and the layouts, and it kind of just distracts me from my day. And I think also the other one, this is probably going to sound somewhat silly, but one that I truly enjoy, like if I'm having a moment, because I spend a lot of time in my head, and I
Mm,
do a lot of ruminating where, the day's events, play over and over and over and over and over again. And I try to figure out
mhm,
like how I could have done something differently, which is linked to my anxiety.
mm,
But one of the things that I truly enjoy is coloring. I have all
mm.
kind of colored pencils and markers and pens and books. I truly, yeah, I am an advocate for adult
A,
coloring.
a lot of people have been picking that up lately. I might have to look into that.
Yeah, it's one of the things that my therapist shared with me that she enjoyed doing. And
Hmm.
she had one that was very beautiful, but it was all swear words. And I think she
Hence the
pulled
adult part.
and I think she pulled it out because in one of our first sessions I dropped so many swear words. But I bought it and I love it. And it's a release. But I think the thing that I learned through that process was it just got me out of my head for that moment, and it
Yeah.
focused all that energy on something that was not so serious.
Yeah.
And because I think the biggest part that I've gained from therapy is just life is serious, but we can have those moments to just breathe and to just laugh and to just have fun.
Yeah.
And I'm such an ambitious, driven person that I lose sight of that. And I think that's, over my therapeutic journey, that's been the biggest gain for me is just recognizing when I'm feeling like I'm keep going, 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 that I just need to take a step back. Because even when we
Yeah.
talked about, me not sleeping for those few days, I colored.
Yeah.
And by the
Yeah.
last day of me not sleeping, I finally fell asleep because I just got out of my head and I was able to color and just,
Yeah.
it, I don't know, it makes me feel better. And I'm not
Yeah.
ashamed to say that I like to color.
No.
Bring me my juice box and give me my crayons and leave me alone.
Why you color your swear words? No. No, I have to try that. That sounds like it's fun though.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, everybody. Well, I think that is the end of our discussion today. And, we hope that you've enjoyed this. Tracy, anything that you
Mhm.
like to add before we?
Yeah, just the fact that we all have to remember that we're only human and that there's no shame in admitting that we need help or that we need to seek help because we're not alone. And we just have to stop ignoring our needs and just take care of ourselves. So if you want to learn more, visit us at copequeens.com. And until next time, you guys take care of yourselves.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye. You've reached the end of another episode of the Cope Queens podcast. Thank you for coping with us today, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode. Until then, connect with us on Twitter at Cope Queens.